I do want to point out that most of our one seeds are out of this bracket right now, which rarely happens on this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our taste is the best taste.
There you go. I think that means that there's a glitch in the matrix. The films of the 1990s were big, bold, and left a lasting impression on audiences and future filmmakers alike. Their soundtracks were no different. After the 1980s saw an explosion in commercially viable movie soundtracks, the 90s upped the ante, stacking major films with exclusive songs from some of the day's biggest music artists or carefully curating track lists of future indie darlings. Now, 20 plus years later, the Great Pop Culture Debate podcast wants to look and listen back to the end of the 20th century as we determine the best 1990s film soundtrack. You say I only hear what I want to, and you're right, because it's my goddamn podcast. Shantae, you stay. I'm your host, Eric Rezsnyak. Please help me welcome my panel for this episode. Our first panelist isn't clueless about this titanic, bittersweet symphony of 90s music. It's Jim Czadzeck.
Well, Eric, while I might be feeling a little dazed and confused, I can't hardly wait to dive into this craft of these singles and soundtracks with no cruel intentions, of course.
Oh, wow.
Cheers, Jim.
That's got to be a record.
It has to be. Well, Jim, I look forward to watching you do that thing you do. Welcome back. Next, she's the friend asking the cashier to turn up my Sharona. It's Karissa Kloss.
Can you turn this up, please? You won't be sorry. Also, Evian is naive, spelled backwards.
It so is. And finally, the more you get into her, the stranger it feels. Welcome back, Kate Racculia.
Na 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 na. I got knocked out in the first round. God damn it!
It's true. It's true. So, speaking of which, if you're curious about how we ended up with this top 16, become a Patreon supporter of the podcast or check out the bonus preview of this episode on your podcast platform of choice, in which we go through the whole bracket up to this point. And don't forget, you can head to greatpopculturedebate.com and find the listener bracket for this episode so you can play along with us at home. With that out of the way, you're all our babies tonight, so let's move on to these debates. First, it's another unanimous victory for ultimate number one seed Clueless, which was totally butt-crazy popular compared to 4-seed Can't Hardly Wait. As I mentioned in the break in between filming part 1 and part 2, this is really kind of filet mignon versus steakums. Clueless and Can't Hardly Wait, very much the same vein in terms of soundtracks. And I do want to really reiterate this. We're talking soundtracks, not movies here, right? So we're specifically looking through that lens. Next, it looks like 3-seed The Lion King just can't wait to get to round 3 as it has majority support over 2-seed The Wedding Singer. But I am saying be prepared to defend yourself as I croon in favor of 2-seed The Wedding Singer. Karissa, get Lion King out of Africa and into round 3. I will pick up the torch of elderly white people spitting rapper's delight as I defend The Wedding Singer. Karissa, why don't you go first?
The Lion King is such a successful film and also soundtrack. It's Elton John and Hans Zimmer just doing all the things. You've got all the bangers from the film that then became the musical. Circle of Life, Can You Feel the Love Tonight, Hakuna Matata. Elton John performs on several of the songs along with the cast, which is really fun and cute. It's also the best-selling soundtrack to an animated film in the United States ever. And it has sold over 7 million copies, only about 4.3 of which happened the first year that it was out. Which is still an insane amount of CDs. I bought it. I bought it twice.
Same. Well, not twice, just once.
Yeah. I scratched mine. It got stuck in my 3-disc changer, and I got it out with a plastic ruler. Wouldn't recommend.
That is the 90s right there, kids.
Right there.
CD changers.
The struggle was so real.
It really was. Great argument, Karissa. Anything else to add on Lion King?
I mean, I think that's all I need for now. You let me know.
Yeah. So I actually argued against The Wedding Singer in round 1 because although it is one of my favorite 90s movies, it is a overwhelmingly 80s soundtrack, which I think hurts its overall 90s-ness. But I'm stumping for it here because I similarly don't feel like The Lion King really fits this category. Is it a soundtrack released in the 90s? You bet it is. But is it a completely different, animal than virtually anything else in this bracket? Also, yes. While the Wedding Singer soundtrack is 90% 80s music, they're all amazing 80s tracks. Every Little Thing She Does is Magic by the Police, Hold Me Down by the Thompson Twins, Every Day I Write the Book by Elvis Costello. Also includes notable covers of 80 songs, including the President of the United States of America's Video Killed the Radio Star, which is a banger cover, arguably better than the original. There are also the original Adam Sandler songs, Somebody Kill Me and Grow Old With You, which actually appears on the second soundtrack. That's right. This was so popular that a second soundtrack was released for The Wedding Singer because, like Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion, which unfortunately got knocked out on round one, it was such a huge hit they did a whole second soundtrack featuring more awesome 80s hits. And what is more 90s than crass commercialism and bleeding a property dry? So with that being said, Jim, where are you on this one?
I think a category that maybe wasn't in other times we've talked about soundtracks, that for me personally is did I see it on my friend's CD collection? Did I see it on maybe family members, parents? And this I think definitely Lion King falls under that category of like it. If I'm thinking outside of my experience, it definitely is such a big moment of the 90s soundtrack and film. I'm going to vote with that.
Yeah. Kate, what about you?
So I owned both The Lion King and both of the Wedding Singer soundtracks. And in the previous round, go listen to the Patreon, friends. I argued Eric argued and I flipped and supported that Batman Forever soundtrack should beat Lion King. And now that we are here, I do not think that the Wedding Singer should beat the Batman Forever soundtrack. So the Lion King shall advance.
We love a spite vote.
Spite vote.
The transitive property of it. I will say this, for all of my grousing over the Lion King not fitting because it's an animated movie and the songs from the animated movie, this one hits different because it is Elton John.
It's Elton fucking John.
Elton John released pop versions of those songs that were monster hits. So I can feel myself becoming more comfortable with Lion King advancing. Let's just say that. And it will advance into round 3.
Can you feel...
I can feel
the love
I'm not
tonight?
going to say the love tonight. I will say I can feel
the compromise.
Yes, I can feel the compromise this afternoon. Next, it's a tragedy as the majority of the panel is swooning over 4-seed William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet, but Karissa wants to continue seducing 1-seed Cruel Intentions. Kate, explain why Romeo is still your number one crush. Kate, engage in an elaborate manipulation in order to sway votes in favor of Intentions. I'm going to have Kate go first.
I'm shocked, frankly, Karissa, that you are... Okay, so William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet, music from the motion picture. It is Baz Luhrmann's absolutely wackadoo interpretation of Romeo and Juliet, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. God damn, this movie is the 90s thing you could possibly imagine. And the music is pop music. Some of it recorded for the film, some of it not recorded for the film, but it is absolutely integral to the experience of the film. And I would also say the best part of the film, honestly, the music and the visuals. Up until everything goes to shit, I love this movie. And then everything goes to shit and you're like, oh my God, they're just shitty teenagers. What is happening? Which is actually the story of Romeo and Juliet, but it loses some of its punch, right? Yeah. It's accurate. So, but we've got Garbage, number one crush. My God, if you have not listened to this song recently, do yourself a favor.
So
Everclear, Gavin Friday, Desiree's Kissing You, which is so good. You have the Butthole Surfers. You have one of the best Radiohead songs of all time, regardless of whether or not it's on a soundtrack, Talk Show Host, which like every time I hear it, do I see Leo DiCaprio sitting out on a beach just like smoking and being like a teenage dork? Yes, it's fantastic. But I also want to say a song on this album that like head and shoulders above almost any other song we have talked about heretofore. The Cardigans' Love Fool is on William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet. This, I'm just gonna, cards on the table, I have this going all the goddamn way. This album is absolutely spectacular and the most 90s thing you could possibly imagine. Also, there's 2 of them because they loved it so much. There's 2 versions.
Are there? I didn't know that. Carissa, talk to me about Cruel Intentions.
Wow, all of a sudden, like, that's a lot of pressure.
But
I would argue, and I will argue, that Cruel Intentions is also quintessentially 90s.
Sure.
Just looking at the bands that are on it, you have Blur, Counting Crows, Marcy Playground, Amy Mann, and The Verve, Bittersweet Symphony. And the Counting Crows song is Colorblind, which is like the most gorgeous, beautiful, sad, slowed down. Like this soundtrack is like the I'm 15 and I'm depressed teenage mood that's like poppy. It's not like the Crow depressed, right? But it's
or
like,
the Romeo and Juliet depressed. It's
exactly
its own kind of depressed. Yes.
Right. But it really like it if this were a chord, it would be a minor chord, you know? Like, that's what this soundtrack is. And that feels so 90s to me and was such my experience, and just the way that they're woven in and the really emotional moments. Like, this is it for me. It is.
It's so important for people who were not alive or were in the 90s to understand. Everyone in the 90s was depressed. We were all depressed.
Oh my God, we were so depressed.
We had no reason. Like, look at what life has become since the 90s. Like,
true.
we had it so good.
We lived before the internet. It was kind of glorious.
We never had it better.
Like, I was talking about this with my partner the other day, and was like, what killed these? Oh, Napster. That's why there aren't, that's why all of these are mixtapes that you just make without even thinking about now.
Correct.
But you couldn't do that.
Yep. Jim, where are you coming out on this one?
My vote is for the song "Talk Show Host" by Radiohead. I mean,
correct. Absolutely correct.
It's a non-album track that's one of their best. Honestly, it's really up there. But
it's the only way you get it.
That aside, I love the film. They're both great films, but I mean the Romeo plus Juliet, as you pointed out, it's a great soundtrack. I'm going there.
I do think that we had some wonkiness with the seedings in this one. I would have expected that Romeo and Juliet would be a 1 seed, and instead Cruel Intentions is the 1 seed here. That's wild.
That's wild.
So interesting to
but
me.
no, it doesn't surprise me.
Really?
Yeah, no.
Between those two films, you think that Cruel Intentions was the more popular one?
Well, it's an age thing, right? It's like 2 or 3 critical years.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. The micro decades. Okay, I'm voting for William Shakespeare here. I do think it is the more the more impactful soundtrack of the two, even though they're both filled with 90s alt rock gems, but I'm giving it to Shakespeare here. So that will advance into round 3. Next, the panel is evenly split between 3 seed The Craft and 2 seed Empire Records. Jim, bind The Craft's chances and propel it into round 3. Kate, put Rex Manning into effects and push for Empire Records. I'm going to have Kate go first.
I would just like to bring the pod's attention to the fact that somebody on this pod was born on Rex Manning Day. So that's just a little information.
Or Rex Manning Day
commemorates her birth.
It's true. It's true.
Empire Records, the soundtrack, Empire Records, the film, is a film designed to have a soundtrack. Like, it was made to push soundtracks into the hands of teeny boppers in malls, because they were like, wow, teens today in the 90s really love soundtracks. So let's make a movie about let's make a movie that's an excuse, that's an advertisement for a soundtrack.
Yep.
And the fact that it's actually fucking great is almost an accident, I think. And I feel grateful for it, because this is just a cold, calculated marketing decision. The movie, if you haven't seen it, you should. It's fun. It is what it is like to be an ensemble comedy that's really a commercial for a soundtrack in the 90s. Liv Tyler's in it. Ethan Embry's in it. Debbie Mazur's in it. Baby Renee Zellweger is in it. And Sexy Rexy, our own. What the hell is his name? I can't think of his name. My brain is not working today. He was in Grease too. That guy.
Oh, Maxwell Caulfield.
Yes, Maxwell Caulfield. Also
God,
in it.
He was hot in the 80s. Not so much in the 90s, but in the 80s, very hot.
Very hot, very hot. So this is just also legitimately a great soundtrack. It has a lot of kind of smaller, under the radar, alternative bands that were just like, they're like, hey, put them on the soundtrack because we want to sell it. We have the Gin Blossoms, Till I Hear It From You. We have Cranberries, Liar. Edwyn Collins, A Girl Like You, which you will actually see other places and is a great song. Free the Martinis, Toad the Wet Sprocket, Crazy Life, The Innocence Mission, Bright as Yellow, Better Than Ezra, Circle of Friends, Ape Hangers, I Don't Want to Live Today, Cracker, Whole Lot of Trouble, I love that song. Ready, Steady, Go by the Mises, What You Are, Drill, Nice Overalls, Lester, Here It Comes Again, Please, The Ballad of El Goodo, Evan Dando, and Sugar High, Coyote Shivers, who is also an actor in the movie. There is not a bad song on this list. It is a kind of like right down the middle alternative mall impeccable soundtrack.
Jim, the gauntlet has been thrown. So you're going to have to counterspell this for the craft. Go for it.
Nice. I like that. This was a tough one because I knew Empire Records as everything you said, right? It's a great collection of like lesser known bands to some extent. And it was a big deal in that moment. But then I didn't really honestly know either one till I kind of looked at it. But as I was comparing, we talked earlier in part one about like kids these days. You need to understand that we didn't have the internet in the way you do. We didn't have, algorithms telling us what great playlists are. And we didn't have Wikipedia even to like research all this kind of stuff to that extent that you do today. You really had mixtapes made by friends or mixtapes made by soundtracks. And I think this one, when I started looking at it, I was like, this is a really good introduction to a lot of different bands, a good collection, some covers that are of older, they're covers of other band songs. So Tomorrow Never Knows by Lennon McCartney is done by Our Lady Peace. You have, songs by Sponge, Letters to Cleo, How Soon Is Now by Love Split Love, which is, classic. You have other songs that are, Jewel, Matthew Sweet, a nice kind of variety of that, Space Hog, Elastica. So you have all of those things that nudged me in the other direction, even though I know they're kind of great collections, both of them.
Yeah, this is a tight one. It is a 2-seed and 3-seed, and I think that is correct. I think that is exactly where they need to be. Karissa, where are you on this?
I just want to point out that we've seen Letters to Cleo in at least 3 songs across 2 soundtracks right now, and 2 soundtracks that feature How Soon Is Now, either by the Smiths or cover by the Smiths. So that's interesting. Yes. But sharing a birthday with the holiday that is Rex Manning Day definitely tips me toward Empire Records. I own this on vinyl. It is translucent orange, and it is lovely and gorgeous. Fantastic. And this soundtrack is a bop. The film is a bop, and everything about it is amazing. It has to
Say no more. Mone more.
What I find so interesting is I was listening to this when we were on vacation at the Jersey Shore with my partner, and we put on the Craft soundtrack, and How Soon Is Now comes out. I was like, this can't be right. This is the same song that opens Charmed, which is another show about witches. And
it works so well.
Enough, it is the same song. But hilarious. So fun fact, our editor for this episode, hi Jack, said there's only 2 answers. It's the Batman Forever soundtrack or the Craft soundtrack. Correct. And I'm very sorry for you, Jack, but both the second one's about to go out, because even if I did vote for the Craft, and I am leaning towards the Craft, it doesn't matter because Empire Records is the higher seed here. So we are currently split. The thing I will say for Empire Records, listening to that soundtrack again, is it sounds exactly like what I would expect to hear when I'm walking into an alternative music store in 1995. That is exactly what we'll be playing. And I think that's actually remarkable for a soundtrack to capture that sound so well. So I believe it is Empire Records is Kate and Karissa, me and Jim on the Craft, but Empire Records is the higher seed, and it will advance to round 3.
Thank goodness.
I don't have to explain my art to you, Warren.
Next, not 1, not 2, but 3 unanimous decisions as 4-seed Reality Bites couldn't find enough reasons to move forward 1-seed 10 Things I Hate About You. I am so glad that it's gone. I am sick and tired of talking about that goddamn movie on this podcast. 6-seed Wayne's World smoked out. What? Go ahead.
You said that earlier that you don't want to talk about anymore on the podcast. 10 Things I Hate About You, but I'm pretty sure we're going to convince you to do best Shakespearean adaptation, and it's going to be on that.
Oh, baby!
Sorry to burst your bubble.
Everything's fine. I'm glad you all love it so much. 6-seed Wayne's World smoked out 2-seed Dazed and Confused, and 4-seed The Bodyguard put out a hit on 1-seed Pulp Fiction. I do want to point out that most of our 1-seeds are out of this bracket right now, which rarely happens on this show.
Yeah.
Our
taste is the best taste.
There you go. I think that means that there's a glitch in the matrix. Finally, in round 2, 3/4 of the panel continues to sample the box of chocolates that is 3-seed Forrest Gump. And I remain ready to mingle with 7-seed singles. Jim, I lack the ability and interest in making another Forrest Gump pun. So you talk about that. I will play the field for singles. I'd like to start first, if I may, because
is this where we get read?
Where I get read you all fulfilled. I had warned my panelists that this was coming. So,
all right.
You know how on this podcast we say everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion. I am not actually sure that my respected panelists are entitled to this wrong opinion. Forrest Gump over singles? Are you kidding me? Okay. Singles is a hugely important soundtrack for the 90s. Don't take my word for it. According to Steve Huey of AllMusic, quote, Singles helped crystallize the idea of the Seattle scene in the mainstream public's mind. And it was also one of the first big-selling 90s movie soundtracks to feature largely new work from contemporary artists. The soundtrack was released in 1992, 3 months before the Cameron Crowe film it was attached to was even released, because it was intended to hype the movie. And it did. It went double platinum and cracked the top 10 album charts. What acts are actually on the soundtrack? Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Chris Cornell, Mudhoney, Smashing Pumpkins, Paul Westerberg, shout out to Brendan Hay. Singles is grunge music. Grunge music was the 90s. Forrest Gump was lame in the 90s and does not fare any better now. So I say to you, Jim, explain yourself.
Oh, this is hard.
You got this, Jim.
Well, the tough thing is that I do agree with you that singles is all that, right? It is very 90s, very, very 90s. But as I mentioned, as I was setting up my argument last time I talked, there is the idea of like, was this in everyone's CD collection or our parents? Sure. Was it a great mixtape of a certain type of music, a great collection, because you couldn't get that on the internet. You couldn't get that. You couldn't download something, and you didn't have all these albums together. So it was such a great exposure to a wide range of music that also is these timeless classics that are integrated into the film to kind of show passage of time and give a sense of the iconic, in each scene, it gives a sense of place in the moment. It gives you this historical journey. It gives you, there's the emotional kind of resonance to that. A lot of the songs are like a needle drop that gets you in that moment, right in the film. And so it's very well integrated, but also it stands alone as a great soundtrack because it is in some ways a great mixtape. You know, it has all of those songs. For like me and my brother, we'd listen to it and be like, oh, that song's by that artist, or, oh, I've heard that before. It was new. It was a learning experience, I suppose, for a lot of these big names. And it has, it does kind of give that historical sense. No, there may not be any songs from the 90s on it other than the theme, but it definitely, it was a big moment, kind of like the Lion King argument too, for me personally. Like once I made that commitment to that idea, it was a thing of the 90s. It was a big thing of the 90s, even though the soundtrack itself might not represent the music of the 90s.
I think you defended it as well as anyone could. Kate, where are you?
It is impossible to overstate or to even count how many times I listened to the Forrest Gump soundtrack. Like I can see it, the little red disc, the little blue disc. It was just constantly in my player. This was how I, at the age of 13, 14, became educated in very high level 50, 40 years of American popular music. I have never listened to the single soundtrack. That said, I think this is a micro-generation thing. I'm not a huge grunge person. And your argument is correct, Eric, and I'm almost swayed by it, right? That like the whole reason we have the kind of soundtracks we do in the 90s is because of the singles soundtrack, right? Because it was so successful and it actually like led a cultural moment, right? Like introduced the world at large to grunge. So I guess, my rubric was, did I own it? and what was my relationship to it? How 90s is it? And what is more 90s than a sort of like keep it simple, stupid guide?
It is that, yeah.
So like some pretty like basic white bread American music, like, but like,
I'm glad you used the term basic, because if I had to describe the Forrest Gump soundtrack to someone who did not know what it was, I would
Top
say
level, high level.
Imagine pleated khaki pants. That's the Forrest Gump soundtrack. That's it. Karissa, where are you?
Yeah, but I owned the Forrest Gump soundtrack, and I was totally in the grunge microcosm, and I'm a Pumpkins fan, but I did not own the single soundtrack because I knew the Pumpkins, I knew Alice in Chains, but I did not know Creedence Clearwater Revival until...
I did not know Joan Baez until this.
Yes. Yes. Like, it really did. It gave us so much. It was 2 discs worth of stuff that it gave us. And, like, CCR was really having a moment at that time, because then I got, like, the BMG or Columbia House, like, whatever, best of. Like, it was a legit entree point for me into other stuff. And so I have to give it to that.
Whew, here's the last argument I will make. And listen, when I'm beat, and I respect it. Is that you're saying that Forrest Gump was 90s because it came out in the 90s, and that is true. But if Forrest Gump came out in the 2000s, it would have the exact same impact that it did in the 90s.
No, because we would not be buying hard copy CDs.
Yeah.
And
we would have the internet.
We did. Yep.
I don't know if that level of corniness would take off in the 2000s.
After 9/11, probably not.
No.
Yep. Nope.
But we'll never know. So there you have it, folks. I waged the battle. I lost the war. That is it for the end of round 2. We're going to take a quick break to work on our penny whistle solos. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey listeners, it's Bob from the Great Pop Culture Debate. We hope you're enjoying this episode and that you're yelling back at your speakers telling us how wrong we are. Did you know that there's a much better way to tell us how you feel? Come kiki with our panelists on Discord. Our patrons at the $10 level get access to our exclusive Discord server, where you can share your thoughts about our decisions or just gab with our group about everything pop culture. It's like participating in your own episode of RuPaul's Drag Race Untucked. We have something for everyone to talk about, including reality TV, comics, news, nostalgia, and so much more. So if you love spirited debate and fabulous people, become a Patreon supporter today and join in on the conversation.
And we are back for round 3 of our best 90s soundtrack debate. Before we get to the Elite 8, I would like our panelists to share their social media and what else they're working on. Please make sure to include your beeper numbers. Jim, how can people find you? What are you working on?
I can be found at JCZAD on Mastodon and whatever Twitter's called by the time this episode comes out. And I don't know. Oh, yeah, right. We're the 100th episode is what we're currently planning behind the scenes right now. And that'll be a lot of fun. You should definitely check that out.
And it'll be out before this is. So you can actually go back in time. Yes.
And listen to that.
Correct.
And before we made it too, so for us. So like I'm promoting something that I have no idea what it's going to be, but
correct.
It's great.
Welcome
amazing.
To magic. Yep,
amazing. It was so good.
So good. Karissa Kloss, how can people find you and what are you working on?
My account tag everywhere is at Karissa Kloss, all one word. And my current project is trying to somehow keep up with every single currently airing franchise of Drag Race. And it is really, really difficult. It's an uphill battle. Yep. It is like a part-time job.
It is a lifestyle. That's exactly what it is.
It truly is.
It is. Thank you. Kate, how can people find you? What you're working on?
You can find me at the Instagrams at Gomez Rack if you like cat pictures. I'm on the Twitter, whatever, I guess, still at Kate Racculia. I'm working on a book. It's slow. It'll happen someday. It's coming. It's happening. I'm also moving. I will have moved by the time this comes out. Wild.
Exciting times. Well, thank you, Kate. And you can find me at Eric Rezsnyak on Twitter and Instagram, but really you should just message at Great Pop Culture Debate on Insta or at GPCD on Mastodon. We are still on Twitter as much as we would like to get off of it, or as Jim pointed out, whatever the fuck it's called currently, at culture_debate. Social media is a mess. I wish we were back in the 90s before we had it, but then you'd never know about this podcast anyway. So Now let's move on to round 3 so I can get to that 2-for-1 used CD sale at Media Play. Shout out to Media Play.
Media Play!
Oh, God, what a time to be alive. First, I believe it is yet another unanimous victory for ultimate number 1 seed Clueless, which has proved that it is a totally important soundtrack when compared to 3 seed The Lion King.
Hold that thought.
Okay.
I might be flippity flopping.
What is wrong with you, Kate?
Well, here's where I say I love Clueless the movie. The soundtrack is fine. It's fine.
Oh no, you didn't.
It's fine. The Lightning Seed song is absolutely incredible.
Yes.
The rest is fine.
Jill Sobule.
It's fine. It's fine.
So, I didn't eat yesterday, and I didn't eat today, and I'm not gonna eat tomorrow. Come on.
It's fine.
No.
It's fine.
All right. So Kate is now in the Lion King camp. Jim, where are you?
Oh, I don't know.
Why are you thinking? I don't understand what's happening right now.
This was my time to get off that train of Lion King. I think that it had gone far enough. That was my decision at this point. So Clueless.
Okay.
Carissa?
Okay.
Yeah, obviously.
Obvious.
Clueless. As if.
Yeah, I mean, what the hell? You're getting on the freeway. That's what I have to say. Yes, so we will be advancing.
Oh, it does have fake plastic trees.
It has
Yes!
trees. I don't think it has the Celine Dion version of All by Myself on the actual
It does not.
soundtrack.
It does not, no. And it does have Rollin' with My Homies.
It does have, which is important. That's quintessential. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So we will advance The Lion King we will advance Clueless into the final 4. Next, it seems that the majority of the panel remains a fan of the classics, as 4-seed William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet continues to woo votes going into the semifinals. But Karissa has alternative thoughts and prefers 2-seed Empire Records. Kate, explain why you're still a love fool for R plus J. Karissa scrounged up some votes for Empire Records. Karissa, why don't you go first?
I can't believe that Kate is flipping in this battle right now, because as Kate argued for Empire Records earlier, this is a film that was made to have a soundtrack. It is kids working in a record store. You get a lot of different styles, like beyond just the actual official soundtrack. The film, it was my introduction to Gwar. So that's the thing. There's like this whole conversation at the end where they're talking about the Pixies and like bass lines and all kinds of stuff that's amazing. But it really was like a sampling of 90s bands. Cranberries are on here and not really anywhere else that we talked about. And I think the importance of the Cranberries in the 90s cannot be overstated now. Like they really were everywhere and so important to all of us. It's definitely women.
They had to make it linger. They did.
They really did. Better Than Ezra is one of my favorite 90s bands that are still doing stuff. Like, I fucking love them. And they are here with Circle of Friends, which is only for this movie. There's a lot of only for this movie songs here, you know? There are different versions of the soundtrack that have the Coyote Shivers Sugar High with Renee Zellweger doing the verse from the film. So that's really cool. Like, probably kind of meta, like what came first, right? Chicken or the egg. And also, I went to Horde Fest in like 1997. And one of the bands I went to see was Toad the Wet Sprocket, because I was so in love with Crazy Life and it was really great because, you know, their audience was super chill. And so my friend and I got really up close to the front, and it was a festival. So like the next band was on a different stage. So we decided to just wait it out for whoever was coming up on the stage we were at. And I don't remember who it was, but it was somebody a lot more rockin', and I had to be pulled out by security guards over a bunch of people because I almost died.
Again,
I was 15. Yes.
That was the 90s.
Yep. So that was fun. So yeah, Toad the Wet Sprocket on Empire Records. Lots of memories. It's gotta move forward.
Kate, Romeo and Juliet.
I honestly, I don't know what I can say to that. That is a gauntlet. That is a gauntlet. I mean, what I would say, Empire Records has consistency, stem to stern. It does have some songs in the movie that are not on the soundtrack, like This Is the Day, which is
such a
heartbreaking
song
to me.
And Money.
And Money. Yep. It's what they want. I would argue that the highs on William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet are higher than the highs on Empire Records. Number One Crush is an absolute stone cold, like one of the greatest songs of the 90s. Talk show host, one of the greatest songs, period, of the 90s or otherwise. Love Fool, like I said. And also, I mean, granted, I've probably seen Empire Records more often than I've seen Romeo and Juliet, as discussed before. There's a point in the movie where I'm just like, oh, these shitty kids are just going to make a big mess for everyone. What the hell's going on? But the Kissing You song is so inextricable from the scene where Leo and Claire like make eyes at each other through a fish tank. Iconic. And I think one of the things that's so like a really great soundtrack is one that you cannot separate from the film. And I actually can separate the Empire Records soundtrack from the film. The only song I really think I like have in my mind is the one that like Liv Tyler is like sexy dancing to, like while she's waiting for Sexy Rexy to show up. Like that song, I think is the Innocence Mission song, maybe? Snake.
Yeah.
So like, but the rest of it, it's not quite as, which I'm sure is probably because, I'm sorry, whoever made Empire Records, but you're not kind of in Baz Luhrmann's league in terms of marrying music to image. So that's why I'm giving it to Romeo and Juliet, because of a piece with the film, it is a superior soundtrack.
Jim, where are you on this one?
I agree with Kate.
No.
So...
Can I just say, if I'm going to listen to a soundtrack, I want it to be more than like 3 good songs and a bunch of stuff that, was also ran on the thing. Like, Kate hasn't seen Reality Bites or Empire Records, probably both, nearly as recently as I have. But these songs are so woven into the film. There's Ready, Steady, Go, and they're chasing the shoplifter through the store. The Cranberries, like Better Than Ezra stuff. It's like you just need to rewatch it and you'll be like, oh yeah. Like it is interwoven. It is consistent. And if you're gonna listen to an album, you want something where every part of it is good, not 3 are great and then 10 are like whatever.
Yes, it's fair. But the rest of the songs are very good.
Here's my argument.
Chris is like, sure.
I agree with Kate's argument that the highs on Romeo are higher because this is another super 90s reference. Who remembers ash cans? Remember ash cans? They were a thing in the 90s. They were like cheapo comics that were used to promote like kind of like forerunners of the actual first issues coming out. So you would like read through the preview and then go and pick up the regular thing. You know what I mean? And so I feel like the Empire Records soundtrack is like the ash cans of soundtracks. It was like, here's a whole bunch of really cool up and coming bands that you should know about and get into them, which again is exactly what you would expect from an alternative music store at that time. So it really works well. But in terms of which one had the most pop to me and the songs that I can name off very quickly and that walloped me while watching the film, it is Romeo and Juliet. So I'm sorry, Karissa.
No!
If I have to suffer with singles going out to Forrest fucking Gump, you can suffer this.
Imagine me, Paul Rubens dying in Buffy the Vampire Slayer right now. Also, shout out to an icon. But yes,
shout out to a real one. For sure. All right, so we will be moving Romeo and Shakespeare. Romeo and Juliet, well, we don't know their lives.
We don't know their lives.
The final 4.
That's the fanfic version.
Would watch.
Yeah, there you go.
Would watch.
Next, the Mirthmobile may be running out of gas as 3-seed Wayne's World is currently losing the match against 4-seed Reality Bites. Jim, explain why we are totally mental if we abandon Wayne and Garth at this point in the bracket. I will explain why Reality Bites remains my 90s soundtrack fantasy. Jim, do you want to talk? We haven't talked about Wayne's World yet. Do you want to go ahead and talk about it?
No, we haven't. And looking at behind the scenes, it looks like I have things stacked up against me a little bit here.
You maybe do.
So what I have to admit something, I needed to prepare and I didn't feel prepared, and I didn't believe in myself enough. So I've been in my non-podcasting life, I've been working a little bit with generative AI and ChatGPT. So I reached out to ChatGPT to build my argument for me.
Oh my God.
And I thought I would do it for you. I think it'll give it a little more pop. Okay. So Party on, podcasters. Wayne's World is crashing the debate with its headbanging anthems and irreverent charm. While other soundtracks might be stuck in traffic, Wayne's World is the one that's shredding guitar solos and partying like it's 1992. So grab your air guitar and let's rock on the debate stage because it's the battle of the bands. Wayne's World is the ultimate headliner. It has iconic anthems. Songs like Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen and Dreamweaver by Gary Wright have become synonymous with the movie itself. Party atmosphere. It has tracks like Party On Wayne, Party and Garth, and the soundtrack not only enhances the movie's party scene, but it also brings on the party vibe directly to your ears.
Party.
Say party one more time.
That's the next line. Why comparing it? I asked it to compare it against Reality Bites. So these are like some digs from ChatGPT. All right, party versus brooding. While Reality Bites might be brooding over life's complexities, Wayne's World is too busy partying on, providing that little headbanging can do wonders for one's perspective, and also has cultural significance. Wayne's World is not just a movie, it's a cultural phenomenon that transformed the way we jam to Bohemian Rhapsody forever. Can Reality Bites claim it influenced carpool karaoke trends? So in headbanging hilarity versus brooding reality, Wayne's World rocks on with its timeless anthems and unbeatable party spirit. Party on, Wayne.
Party on
Garth.
Party on, Garth.
Party on, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but that makes me feel a lot more secure about my job. So thank you for that, Jim. Let me talk to you.
Versus brooding.
Party versus brooding. Yes.
Let me talk about
You've described that was the change in the 90s.
It was.
That was. Yes.
It was the literal change of mood. Yes.
And now I'm going to talk to you about pro brooding. So this is a tight one because they're actually both great soundtracks that are essentially 90s. Like I give Reality Bites the edge here for having more original 90s music on it. Lenny Kravitz, Crowded House, Dinosaur Jr., The Posies, Juliana Hatfield. It also created hits in the 90s for 80s songs that were re-released, Tempted by Squeeze and My Sharona by the Knack. Which is not to say that Wayne's World did not have hits for re-released songs as well, obviously Bohemian Rhapsody. But of course, the reason that Reality Bites is a top 490 soundtrack, in my opinion, is Stay by Lisa Loeb. We have talked about this before on the podcast. Stay made Lisa Loeb the only artist in Billboard history to top the singles chart without being signed to a record label. That is an incredible achievement. The song went to the number 6 on the top 100 Billboard charts for 1994, and it was the number 42 Billboard Top 100 song for the entire 1990s. But it's just one song, you say. Well, you say I only hear what I want to. It is a song that is instantly recognizable even 30 years later, and it perfectly captured a moment, a vibe that was unequivocally 90s. It is musical amber, and we wouldn't have it without the Reality Bites soundtrack. That whole soundtrack captures that moment, that vibe in the mid-90s. And I think ChatGPT made a great point that Wayne's World forever changed the carpool karaoke. I would argue to you that the Reality Bites soundtrack forever changed the coffee house singer-songwriter vibe. We didn't have that crystallized the way that we did before this album. So with that being said, Karissa, where are you?
Yeah, this was the closest to a Sophie's Choice for me in this because Bohemian Rhapsody fundamentally changed the way I listened to Queen and also rode in cars. But Reality Bites is so 90s and introduced me to the Violent Femmes. So I have to go there.
Kate.
I am definitely Reality Bites. And it's interesting. I don't think of Wayne's World as a soundtrack. Like, I was like, what's on it other than the Tia Carrera song, which is incredible.
There's multiples of hers, which is that's the one part that I was like, because she's amazing.
Yeah. Because, like, when I think of that song, I mean, maybe it's also age. I was listening to the radio, right? I didn't have a CD player yet when that movie came out, but I definitely had a CD player when Reality Bites came out. And this soundtrack is absolutely exceptional. We even have Ethan Hawke singing I'm Nothing. And he's terrible in such a way that my friend Laura used to say, oh God, Ethan, don't sing. But it's got All I Want Is You, which is one of the most beautiful U2 songs.
I think it's the best.
Such a good song. Yeah, anyway, I'm reality. I'm biting.
So great job, Jim and ChatGPT, but we are going to move Reality Bites into the final four. Finally, in round 3, one more unanimous victory as 4-seed The Bodyguard remains the queen of the night, defeating 3-seed Forrest Gump. Thank God. And with that, we have our final four. We're going to take a quick break to see what's available via the Columbia House Record Club this month. We will be right back after these messages. And we are back with the final four of our best 90s soundtrack debate. At this point in the show, I always like to take a step back and see if we got to the final four that I was expecting. I think I can say unequivocally no. It's certainly not the final four that the voters in our polls expected, because we have 1 1-seed and 3 4-seeds. But I will say that I enjoy the range of stuff that's on here. I think Reality Bites spoke to young adults and alt rock. The Bodyguard, obviously R&B. William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet and Clueless are maybe in the same vein.
One's a little poppier. One's a little more alt.
One's a little dramatic. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But that being said, let's jump into it. We're going to go around the horn. First up, it's Clueless, a 1-seed, versus William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, a 4-seed. I'm going to start with Jim. Where are you on this one?
I'm still with Romeo and Juliet.
Okay. Karissa, where are you?
I'm with Clueless.
Kate.
Romeo and Juliet.
Okay. I'm going with Clueless. I am, and as much as I'm also sick of talking about 10 Things I Hate of You, I'm actually also getting sick of talking about Clueless.
What?
I know, I am.
SF.
We have hoed that road, and believe me, I know about hoeing.
There goes your social life.
Exactly. Yes, Jim.
I don't know if we've mentioned, I just see it right here, that the 10th anniversary of Romeo plus Juliet included everybody's free to wear sunscreen, which is the most 90est thing possible.
The Baz Luhrmann song.
It is. That's true.
The Baz Luhrmann song, yeah. I don't
I'm
know if that's going to sway anyone, but
I don't think it's going to sway me. I don't. In terms of like why I'm picking it over Romeo and Juliet, first of all, I had Clueless. I didn't have Romeo and Juliet. And I just feel as though... Oh God! Maybe am I wrong? Am I wrong?
No,
Yes,
you're absolutely
wrong.
not wrong.
Eric, me, a child of 16. Oh, I love Clueless. I'll get it from the BMG Music Club.
Yeah.
That was fine.
No, you've got Kids in America, that beautiful Counting Crows, which is live from a studio in Boulder from 1993, which is amazing. Radiohead acoustic doing fake plastic trees.
and
90s,
talk show
we
host-
love their acoustic stuff.
Talk show host is better.
Yeah, but is it acoustic?
It's still better.
It is the only 1-seed left in the bracket, and
And one thing that was briefly mentioned, I think, in our in the warm-up part of the episode, this is the only soundtrack still left in here that acknowledges the ska moment that we had in the 90s. The Mighty Mighty Boss Tones are on here.
that is a great
And we
song,
are not
too.
acknowledging it, but it was a fucking thing. Squirrel Nut Zippers was like, I had that CD. Everyone wanted to do swing classes. It was like a thing. So that's here. And I feel like, I mean, we're sweeping it under the rug now, but like we should acknowledge our problematic past. Okay.
We should.
So
Jim?
maybe to sum up your argument, William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet is what we wish the 90s were, but Clueless is what it actually was.
Yeah, it's
Honestly.
the side by side what I think I am, what I actually am.
Yeah.
That's
I
true.
mean, I'll take it if it moves forward this brilliant gem of collection of songs. But yes,
I think I am going to stick with Clueless. I'm sorry, Kate. But
all right.
it's got to the final
It's all
four.
right. It's cool.
Next, it's Reality Bites versus the Bodyguard. Bodyguard is Romeo and Juliet. Both 4-seeds. I'm going to start with Kate. Reality Bites or Bodyguard?
I have to say Reality Bites, while also acknowledging that the Bodyguard, which we haven't really talked
We
about,
haven't talked about it at all.
like I have appreciated more. Like as a kid, I was like, I'm so tired of that fucking song.
Yeah.
But like as an adult, the movie is just wildly entertaining. cheese trash.
Yep.
She's fantastic in it. It's heartbreaking. That guy is also there, the actual bodyguard. But the soundtrack is impeccable. It is one of the best parts of her recording career.
Yeah.
And it's kind of shades of the like Purple Rain conversation in terms of, but it's more tied in with the movie.
I agree. Yes. Karissa, where are you on this one?
This is hard, but Reality Bites has Ethan Hawke doing a cover of Violent Femmes added up, and like that is my karaoke jam. Ethan Hawke was my '90s any movie, all the things. I was there for that. That's that was a formative viewing for me, and it was entirely based on the music. So Reality Bites.
So Kate, just so I'm clarified, were you?
I was Reality Bites purely on personal, but like Queen of the Night, Run to You, like
it's hard. Whitney was such a moment
I'm Every Woman.
in the 90s.
I Have Nothing. I Will Always Love You.
Yeah, Jim, where are you on this one?
Well, ChatGPT has to say, the
Jim.
bodyguard is serenading souls with Whitney Houston's heavenly voice. Reality Bites seems to be stuck in a reality check of musical mediocrity. Because let's be real. One's a love ballad that never stops, while the other might just be a one-hit wonder in the realm of soundtracks.
What does that even mean?
But it sounds
great, right? Yeah.
compelling.
Outside of that, it's tough because it was such the bodyguard was such a big, it is its thing, right? It is such a big thing, and a credit to a different area that
I have to switch. I switched. I just
ChatGPT switched you.
Yes. Oh, I feel awful.
You
about
should
that.
fear for your jobs, everybody.
Yeah. There go the podcasting jobs. I don't know. It definitely. It was such a big thing, right?
The bodyguard.
And also, I honestly wanted to prop up a different. We had so many of these just 90s alternative rock things that I wanted to prop that up to give it more voice. It's we don't have that sound represented here.
Nope. We got rid of everything that was R&B in round one. I am leaning to the bodyguard here. And my argument is Reality Bites is great. I talked about how good it was last round, but the bodyguard almost, it's not even a soundtrack as much as it is a statement on 90s R&B. It is I just checked this while we were chatting. 45 million copies have been sold of the bodyguard soundtrack.
Wow.
The album gave Houston the distinction of having the most weeks at #1 by a female artist on the Billboard, and she held that record for almost 20 years until Adele's 21.
Yeah.
And
let me say this. I'm not even coming at it from an I Will Always Love You standpoint because great song. But the other Whitney songs on the
they're
soundtrack
so good.
are
Yes.
actually what do it for me.
Yes.
Yep.
I Have Nothing. I use that now all the time. Like still to this day, I'm out of cheese. I have nothing. I give it to the bodyguard. So just to recap, I believe Karissa, you're still on Reality.
I'll stand here, but if we're tied, I'm willing to sway because the arguments are valid, and I'm swayable here, even as much as I love Reality Bites.
Yeah.
Jim, you're with bodyguard.
Yep.
Kate, bodyguard or Reality?
I am with bodyguard. I'm with bodyguard. Well,
So I'll
also
stay
saying,
Reality just for the cred, but
Okay, that I love that. So we have
Love
a
it.
final two of Clueless, our ultimate 1 seed, and the bodyguard, a 4 seed. I'm gonna go around the horn. Jim, where are you coming down?
Boy, good question. What did I vote before?
I have no recollection of
idea.
what you said originally.
yes, things have gone.
Yeah, I had
did.
Romeo plus Juliet as a winner.
Yeah.
So, God. Well, it is hard to go against the fact that The Bodyguard is one of the most best-selling soundtracks of all time. It's a testament to its widespread popularity and enduring impact. So I think I'll go with that.
And I do want to point out, because we get sometimes dinged for this, people like, just because it was the best selling doesn't mean it was the best. And I agree with that. If it was the best selling but not terrific, I mean, I argued The Lion King how many times? And that was like 7 million things sold.
Yeah.
But like The Bodyguard is both the best selling and incredibly good art. Even though the music, it's the soundtrack is better than the movie. That I think is an important distinction here. And Clueless, the movie is better than the soundtrack.
Better than the soundtrack.
Kate, where are you on this?
I am The Bodyguard. That's Yep.
Carissa.
Yeah, I still just see The Bodyguard more as like a Whitney album than as a soundtrack. And Clueless is like very much a collection of songs by various 90s bands, Counting Crows, Luscious Jackson, Radiohead. Like, I can't move forward a best 90s thing that doesn't have Radiohead in it. Crackers here. I mean, Supergrass, and also the Jill Sobule song that we've been talking about. Like, it is the more 90s thing to me versus Bodyguard may be a better album. I own the Clueless soundtrack on vinyl.
All right, so you're distinctly in the Clueless camp. Jim,
yes, I
have you
am.
Been swayed by the argument of Radiohead?
I think I've been swayed. I think I'm in the Clueless camp. You know what I really want? I want Batman Forever to be here, but that's not what we have. So...
Well, I guess we could go back to the Lion Kingness of it all, right? Like, is it one thing? I don't know. Like, I guess you're right. I think Reality Bites is a good variety.
You mean Clueless?
Oh, Clueless.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm looking at all the notes. Clueless.
Things have devolved.
I know. I don't know what's going on. But right, the idea of a again, back to that mixtape idea. Like this has a range of different artists.
All right,
more so.
I've got 2 for Clueless. Kate, lock in your vote. Your final
I'm clueless.
answer.
I'm locked in.
Clueless.
I'm locked
All right.
in.
Clueless.
Yep.
So there you have it. There you have it, folks. Our pick for the best 90s soundtrack is Clueless. Do you agree? Do you think our taste, like reality, totally bites? Tell us how you really feel by leaving a comment on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com or find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Mastodon. While you're there, make sure that you subscribe and follow the podcast so you can hear about what new debates are coming soon, vote in open polls, and even decide which topics we tackle next. If you really enjoyed the episode, please take a minute to like and rate the episode of the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or whatever platform you listen on. I want to say thank you to my panel. I'll make a mixtape of all my favorite clips from this episode for you. And thank you for listening. If you loved what you heard, please consider supporting us on Patreon, where you can get even more exclusive content and you get episodes a whole day early. We hope you have a good one. And remember, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion. I'm totally bugging.